Well, howdy there, daylight burners. Happy Monday. Hope everybody's treating the weekend treated everybody all right. If you're in these fires, hope you're staying safe. I know it's smoky as shit out there right now. Aaron, Danger Aaron, has basically his whole family has caught the super AIDS. I don't know exactly what they got. Some sort of stomach bug going around. So he's not here with us today. So flying solo. I'm not a big fan of the solo podcast, but here we are. Well, at least not going live. I don't mind recording solo, but live stuff. We'll see how it goes. But got a lot to talk about, and not much if it's good, but yeah, that's typically how it goes. People on the fence are the problem. Yeah, that's probably true. First up, I'm gonna talk about I'm gonna talk about Ben and Jerry's. Not a big fan of Ben and Jerry. I'm not a big fan of Jerry's in general. You guys may know. Um, but here's an article from how do you like that graphics and everything. An article from NBC News. Ben and Jerry's West Bank ice cream ban becomes a hot topic in Israel, but not just in Israel. And I think it's important. Even though Ben and Jerry's are a bunch of dirty hippies, basically communists, um, and they're really very counterproductive. Their views on agriculture. However, that being said, we still have a First Amendment here in the United States of America. So this article's from Sephora Smith. Cool name, Sephora. Ice cream has become a hot topic in Israel. Israeli officials have slammed Ben and Jerry's decision to stop selling ice cream in the Israeli-occupied Palestinian territory, accusing it of branding itself as anti-Israel. The boycott of Israel reflects a complete loss of way, Prime Minister Naftali Bennett wrote on Twitter when the article is from July 20th. So about a week ago. A little bit of an old story. However, the part that really is concerning is they've called on more than 35 states. So more than just words and symbolic gestures, Israel is already flexing its diplomatic muscles against the move. Gilad Erdan, Israel's ambassador to the United States, tweeted that he'd written to 35 governors of U.S. states that have legislation against the boycott of Israel, calling on them to impose sanctions against Ben and Jerry's. We view this decision very severely, as it is the de facto adoption of anti-Semitic practices and advancement of the delegitimization of the Jewish state and the dehumanization of the Jewish people, he wrote in the letter, according to a photo he posted on Twitter. Ben and Jerry's and its parent company Unilever did not immediately respond to requests for comment. So this little part right here, Ben and Jerry's and its parent company Unilever, huge corporation, who people like Ben and Jerry supposedly don't like. So we can talk about the hypocrisy of Ben and Jerry all day long. However, when it comes to the Israeli government calling for sanctions against a U.S. company in the U.S., well, the state of Israel can get fucked. You have no say in what an American company does in America. The fact that Ben and Jerry doesn't want to sell their ice cream in the West Bank, well, technically, that's the only person they're hurting is themselves. And they're an American company, governed by an American law, by American laws, and the Israeli government has no say in that, or should have no say in that. However, states like Texas, Florida, and I don't know if Oklahoma has done anything, but there's 35 different states that say if you are a public employee of that state, Oklahoma, Texas, Florida, all of those, that you must sign a contract saying that you cannot promote or advertise the BDS movement, boycott, divest, and sanction. There's a lot of people around the world that are not okay with what Israel is doing to the Palestinian people. I'm not here to get into all that. That I could spend weeks on that whole deal and never really come up with any good solution or really even see through all the bullshit that's happening there. The point is, under U.S. Constitution, the First Amendment, Congress shall make no law bridging the. You know the whole deal. You know the thing, guys. Just to get that right, let me look up the amendment just for accuracy's sake. But Congress shall make no law, and well, it wasn't Congress that made this anti-BDS legislation. It was state Congress, Texas, Florida, and Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peacefully assemble and to petition the government for the redress of grievances. So, doesn't matter if you're a public school teacher or if you're a government contractor. As long as you are a U.S. citizen, you are covered under the First Amendment, and you have the right to say what you want. And if you don't want to support Israel and the occupation of the West Bank, however you may feel about that, you have a right to say that under the First Amendment. Ron DeSantis, who's been pretty good as a governor, I'd say. This one is, I'd say Ron DeSantis can get fucked. I don't care how bad you hate Ben and Jerry's. They have a right to say and support this BDS movement. Whether you agree with it or not, that is their choice. And the Israeli government should have no recourse on what an American company does under that First Amendment. So therefore, the government of Texas, the government of Florida, the government of Oklahoma cannot tell Ben and Jerry's that we're going to impose sanctions on you because you don't support the state of Israel. Do you and a lot of these people are America First people. So are you America First or are you Israel First? Now that is not an anti-Semitic statement. This is the state of Israel. Now, granted, it is a largely Jewish country, but what does that have to do with an American company deciding not to sell ice cream in the fucking West Bank? All these governors and these states that have the anti-BDS legislation, that is blatantly unconstitutional, and as big as douchebags as Ben and Jerry's are, and Unilever, all that, they have no right to say what Ben and Jerry's can do with their own company. By the way, Israel is kind of one of the main driving forces behind us being in the Middle East for the last 50 years. And so as much as the Bible tells you, you got to respect stand behind Israel and all that good stuff. Man, we still have a First Amendment, and you don't have to agree with Israel. You don't have to agree with Ben and Jerry's, but under the First Amendment, Ben and Jerry's can go ahead and support that BDS movement. And these laws in Florida, Texas, 35 different states, by the way, 35 have these anti-BDS laws that you can't promote or support the boycott, divest, and sanction movement against Israel. So, at some point, those laws are going to get challenged. It's going to get taken up to the Supreme Court, and they should be struck down, but we'll see how that goes. Um, that was one that just kind of really struck me the wrong way. And most of these states that have this anti BDS legislation are Republican led, very conservative states, and most of them are supportive of the America First movement. So if you're America first, not Israel first. And my personal thoughts: Israel needs to get the shit together and figure out what to do with that Palestine situation. But in the meantime, I don't support Ben and Jerry's. I haven't bought Ben and Jerry's for years, and I won't. I am not going to start supporting them now. But if we're consistent and we believe in the First Amendment, then they sure have a right to not sell ice cream in the fucking West Bank, and the Israeli government has no recourse on what happens to them in the U.S. So yeah, get fucked Israel, get fucked all these yes moves. Next up, Delta variant. Delta variant, man. This this stuff is well, if you listen to the news, you would think the world is coming to an end. You know, cases are up, and the whole crux of it is it's a pandemic of the non-vaccinated, and with that comes a whole bunch of shady shit. So here is an article from the Gateway Pundit. I don't like this headline, but this is the world we live in. Gateway Pundit's a right-leaning site, and don't be fooled. Conservative media is just as clickbaity as the liberal media. So regime, I guess technically that's right, the regime, but the White House, the Biden administration, or the regime, as they're calling it here, says free speech is killing people. Biden Surgeon General holds press conference, labels disinformation as a national health threat. So, provocative headline, but basically the Surgeon General said last Thursday, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki admitted the federal government is censoring American citizens and flagging problematic social media posts. I think we've covered that before. And then also Friday, Surgeon General Vivek Murthy, stood in front of his liberal peers in the White House press room, and I should have found an article than this. Incredibly slanted, but that once again, that's the world we live in. Everything is incredibly slanted. Labeled free speech as a severe national health risk. That's not exactly the words that he said, but this is a terrible article. But basically, he said vaccine misinformation is a severe national health risk, which in turn leads to the whole First Amendment argument. Do you have the right to say what you want? And yeah, you do. But this I really should have found it. However, with this, there's been a whole bunch of really creepy stuff that has popped up over this this Delta variant. So here's an article from Hero Hedge, which is usually a pretty good website. CNN says to segregate the unvaccinated, make them pay for tests every day. And CNN is a joke, as we all know, but they are still a major source of news for a lot of people out there. First up was CNN's resident medical health expert, Dr. Leanna Wen, called for vaccine passports and forever masking. I think it depends on the circumstance. It is a circus. On the circumstance when said. Explaining. So if you're going to the grocery store and the grocery store doesn't have the capacity to enforce some kind of proof of vaccination, then they have to say that indoor masking needs to apply because we don't know who's vaccinated and who's not. Same thing for schools when continued. Adding schools, you can't expect the teacher in every school to be asking, well, you're not wearing a mask, so are you vaccinated or not? If that's the case, everyone should be wearing masks. But I can imagine that there are already concert venues or workplaces that are saying if you are not vaccinated, you can't come, or you have to get a negative test. That's what's needed in order to really incentivize vaccines at this point, when further stated. When previously suggested that life should be made as difficult as possible for those who are still opting not to take the shots, and that Americans should be banned from engaging in social events and forced to undergo PCR tests twice a week, they want to stay unvaccinated. They also previously advocated directly linking the amount of freedom Americans should be allowed to their vaccination status. And this sounds insane, because it is. And a lot of people say, well, that could never happen here. But if you look over in Europe, there has been widespread protests. This is another article from Zero Hedge. Protesters rage across Europe as lockdowns and vaccination mandates begin. This was yesterday, Sunday the 25th. Anti-lockdown protests kicked into high gear around the globe on Saturday, including irate Irish protesters. Yeah, when the Irish get pissed off, they don't fuck around. And see here, there's a bunch of Twitter videos of. Here's one in London, Paris, Ireland, and Italians. There's Australia, Milan, London, France. Thousands of anti-lockdown demonstrators took to the streets of Sydney and other Australian towns on Sunday to protest new lockdown measures amid a surge of COVID-19 cases in the country. Dozens were arrested and charged after crowds broke through barriers and clashed with officers hurling bottles and anything they could get their hands on. Unmasked protesters marched from Sydney